Let's try this one more time, and hopefully the microphone's connected, because right now it doesn't seem like it is, so. Okay, yeah, it is. What's going on, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Jersey Joe Show, a place where we talk about a little bit of everything, but mostly hockey. And if you can't hear it in my voice right now, I'm pretty sick, which sucks because I am going on vacation tomorrow. And so I'm hoping this kind of blows over tonight and so I can feel better tomorrow. But I'm spending my time straining my voice and doing this show for you guys because I promised you and because I really want to talk about these things. So, like I said, I'm going to be talking about the dozens of trades that have been going on around the league the past 2 or 3 weeks. Unfortunately, I don't have enough time or really voice left to go in depth about all of them. So I do want to talk about the top 3 that are most interesting to me. I'm just going to apologize in advance. Usually I'm much more on my game in terms of knowing stats and very minute information, but as someone who even enjoys hockey news and spends a lot of his free time reading news and reading forums and tweets and trying to get as much information as possible, this time of year is almost overwhelming, as in there's so many things changing on a daily basis and it's very hard to keep up with. So during the year when it's slower, I'll know, paragraphs and paragraphs worth of information on every single thing that happens in the league. Just because things only happen, once or twice a day and you can read about it in depth. But now there's 5, 6, 7 different things happening. There's expansion draft that happened last week. There's the entry draft that happened last week. It's just a constant flurry of changes with players and contracts and UFAs being signed in a couple of days. It's very difficult for me to even try and keep up with it, let alone talk about it in depth in an informative way. But I'm going to try my best, and especially now because I'm going on vacation, I'm incredibly busy, so I do apologize in advance if the content's a bit light right now. It's not going to be like this in the future. It's just for this little bit right now. So that being said, and to completely destroy any expectations you had for this show, I wanted to talk about the first trade that I was going to bring up tonight, which was Jordan Eberle for Ryan Strome. And this was one of those ones that you understood one side. So let me rephrase that. You saw where one side was coming from, but you expected the other side. And so what I mean is we all expected Eberle to be traded. He has a $6 million cap hit right now. They're trying to sign Draisaitl. They're trying to sign McDavid. They don't have a lot of cap space to move around. So Eberle, he's been underwhelming. He's not the best right wing on the Oilers anymore. They needed to kind of free up that space. So you expected that. But you don't understand who they traded them for, which was Ryan Strome of the Islanders. Now, if you're the Islanders, you understand completely where they're coming from. They got Jordan Eberle for a bit of an underwhelming up-and-coming RFA in Ryan Strome. That's about a 30 or 40 point difference. I think Eberle's best year was 2013. He had around 70 points. He's kind of averaged out to about 50 to 60 between now and then. Whereas Strome's best year, I think he had 45, around there. And he hasn't hit that mark since. But again, Jordan Eberle is 27. He's going to be a UFA in 2 years. And he has a cap hit of $6 million. Ryan Strome is 23. He's going to be an RFA, I believe, at the end of 2017, 2018. And he has a cap hit of $2.5 million. So right there, you save $3.5 million just by trading him and getting a somewhat decent return in a player. It was a cap dump. That's really what it boils down to. I know Eberle wasn't happy. He wasn't playing as well as someone you would think of his stature would play. And so it makes sense on the Oilers side. I just would have thought you'd get a higher return for someone like Jordan Eberle. Even maybe some picks, but no, it pretty much is a one-for-one. I don't believe there's any picks, If it wasn't a first or second round. So it was an interesting trade. Like I said, you understand where each side is coming from, but you would have thought Eberle would get a little bit more for as an asset. But it's that time of year where things don't make sense, and people are going for pretty cheap. So we'll see how that pans out for both of those teams. So probably my favorite trade that happened, and just in terms of straight up bizarreness, but also a really exciting outcome for for one team, is the Niklas Hjalmarsson to Arizona for Connor Murphy and Laurent Dauphin, if you say his name as a Frenchman, which I just did. And the reason it's exciting is because Arizona, because they now have Antti Raanta and Derek Stepan, it's showing themselves to be a really interesting team come next year. And they now have a pretty much elite right-handed defender to sit up top with Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Hjalmarsson. And this was one trade where you kind of feel like Chicago is up against the ropes. They're having cap issues, as they always do at this time of year, especially with those horrendous contracts in Taves and Kane. And they had to drop some cap, and they did that with Panarin, which I will talk about. That's the last trade I'm going to talk about, is the Panarin for Saad trade. And then the Hjalmarsson trade. He had a $4.1 million cap hit. It's not gigantic, but they get a good young defenseman in Connor Murphy and an unproven prospect in Dauphin. Connor Murphy was picked by Arizona, and I believe the 2011 draft, he went 20th overall, so he was Arizona's first-round pick. And he's been a pretty steady third and second pairing guy for them, and he has that ability and that upside to be that first pairing defenseman. And I think Chicago was betting on that. They're betting that he's going to be just a younger version of Hjalmarsson in maybe 3 or 4 years, because right now he's young. He's only 24. And then with Dauphin, you don't really have a huge risk in taking him on. His cap hits the minimum at, I think, $626,000. And, you never know. Chicago's development is incredible. They really, not only do they trade really well, as seen with, or not trade, but sign UFAs really well. Every year they do that, as seen with the Panarin UFA signing a couple years ago. But they also really develop their players in a way that they go above and beyond what they were expected to do. And I think they're going to be able to do that, especially with Murphy, but I think even a little bit with Dauphin. And so you get 3 things for Chicago. You get a workable defenseman, a prospect, and you lose about $2.5 to $3 million off the cap when you add in the other players you just picked up. So again, it's just like with Edmonton. I understand it, but you would think they would get a better return. But that's just the market. That's how volatile it is. That's why I'm beyond making any predictions about trades anymore, because they never happen like you think they would, for good or bad reasons. They just don't. And so this was just a very interesting trade, because prior to the announcement that Arizona had gotten Hjalmarsson, there was a lot of rumors that he was actually coming to the Devils, and it made sense. We have a bunch of young forward prospects that could fit in Chicago's system. We have the cap space, obviously, to pick up a $4 million defender. Like, we could pick up probably 10 of those at this point. And we need a defender, especially one who's, while he may not be elite overall, his defensive abilities are absolutely elite in Hjalmarsson. But then he goes to Arizona. So I do think the Devils could have offered more, but Ray Shero may not have wanted to offer that much for him. He may have wanted to have gotten picks, draft defensemen, build up from there, or get someone who's younger. Because Hjalmarsson's 30, not the youngest, but he's also got at least, a good 5 to 6 more years in the tank. And so it makes you wonder what we offered, if we did offer anything, and where those rumors came from. But that's just the fun part of this kind of time of year. Nothing really makes sense, and every day new things are happening, and that goes back to what I said before. It's fun, but it's a little bit overwhelming at the same time. And so now I want to go into what I consider the biggest blockbuster trade of everything that really happened the past few weeks, and that was the Brandon Saad for the Artemi Panarin trade that happened a couple days. And it's not as interesting as the Armisen trade, but these are two huge stars that just got traded to teams, and one got traded from his old team. There's a lot to unpack within the trade. So basically, Artemi Panarin was on the Chicago Blackhawks. He was a Calder Cup winner, or Calder Trophy winner, in 2015, 2016. He puts up about 70 to 75 points per season. Granted, it's only been 2 seasons, but he's not showing any signs of slowing down. I think he had 77 his first and 74 his second, something like that. Whereas Brandon Saad, a little bit older, been in the league a little bit longer, originally a Chicago Blackhawk and won the Cup with them. He's about a 40 to 60 point guy, usually averages at about 50, 55 points. But there's, and I hate using this word, an intangible element with Brandon Saad apparently, because Toews and Kane adored Saad and essentially begged Chicago to bring him back from Columbus, and the price they had to pay for that was sending out Panarin. And just like all the other trades, salaries had a lot to do with it. So right now Panarin's only making about $626,000, which I believe is the minimum, just like a few other players I've been talking about. And Brandon Saad's getting paid about $4 million. Once Panarin's contract's up and he's ready to get a UFA or a big boy contract, his worth is going to be about $6 to $7 million. People will sign him for $6 to $7 million easily. He's a 70 to 80 point guy. Granted, he might be a product of working with Kane, but even so, with lower tier line mates, you're still looking at 60, 65 points from every season. That's easily worth $5, $6, $7 million. And Chicago cannot afford that. That's a $6.5 million increase from where they're at right now. So they trade him away. They get Saad back. They save $3 million. They get someone who Toews and Kane's adore, and someone they won the Cup with. Whereas with Panarin, they've had very, very terrible playoff runs. So there really is an intangible element. I think this is the only time I will agree that there is an intangible. Usually that's just BS that people put out there to try to increase value. But Saad actually does have an intangible element with Chicago. And I feel like Columbus got the better end of the deal. I think Saad fits their big body, big game kind of system a bit more. But Panarin's going to be just phenomenal for the Columbus Blue Jackets. He actually does remind me of Hischier. He's just quick. He's elusive. He has a ridiculous shot. I remember he scored on Corey Schneider from maybe 2 feet in front of the blue line with a wrister. It's an incredibly lethal shot. Columbus is going to be incredibly happy to have someone like him on their lines. And Chicago gets the boys back in town, essentially. I mean, that's really what they're doing at this point. I'm really interested to see if Chicago can keep up their success next year. I don't think it'll be that easy. I don't think they're looking at number 1 in the Central anymore. I think they're looking at, maybe 2 or 3. Probably not a wild card. I think they're going to be better than a wild card. You can't be a wild card team with Toews and Kane and Crawford and Keith. With that core, you're definitely looking at top 3 in the division. But I don't know if they're going to be as dominant as they usually are. I have no idea how they're going to do in the playoffs. These past 2 years, they've been terrible. With the Game 7 loss against St. Louis 2 years ago, and then getting swept by the Predators this year. They're going to be an interesting team to watch next year. So is Columbus. So is Arizona. I guess I just didn't follow the offseason as much last year, but I feel like there's a lot more going on this time. Probably because of the expansion draft is just making it feel that way. But the makeup of a lot of big market teams has changed pretty drastically. And so it's going to be a really interesting season next year. So, like I said, it's going to be a short one tonight. I'm sick. I do have to finish packing. I'm totally procrastinating right now. My flight leaves at 7 o'clock tomorrow, so I better get my shit together. But yeah, that's it for the trades. I'm going to have a free agency show in a couple of days. Maybe not till I get back from vacation. Like I said, just to make the dust settle. But other than that, click the like button, click the subscribe button, and as always, let's go Devils.